This is Congressman Danny Davis. It's once again past 6:30 on a Friday afternoon, and I am indeed delighted to be with the most interactive television show in America, and that's called Hotline 21 on CAN TV, Channel 19. And I am excited because there are a lot of things going on in Washington, District of Columbia this week. There are also a lot of things taking place here in Chicago. I got in town on last night, late, and have had a wonderful, busy day ever since. I mean, early this morning, I had some outstanding meetings with a fellow who thinks that they have a way of getting rid of the lead in pipes for clean drinking water. And we had a wonderful, wonderful meeting. But I also went over to Malcolm X College, and the president of Malcolm X was paying tribute to all of his wonderful staff people and letting them know how valuable they were to the institution. And I had an opportunity to participate in that. And I certainly agree with him in terms of their value. But I also had the opportunity to interact with the male mentoring program, where there was a number of young African-American males in a program that provides mentorship and mentors for them, and that was just outstanding. So I want to commend the Malcolm X College and the City of Chicago City College system for its outstanding program and instructional activity that is taking place for individuals who want to really get off into a career, learn the technical and academic skills that are provided, in some instances, absolutely free, where they don't have to spend or pay any money, and that's pretty cool. So if you're out there and you are student age, and that's any age, because you can learn all the way up to the end of your time. And if you want to learn, you want to prepare for a career, you want to do it on your own time and in your own interest, I would encourage, check out the city colleges, and especially the one I attended today, which was the Malcolm X Community College, and I'm very pleased with that. Now let me tell you what's going on in Washington, D.C. There is a big political fight taking place in Washington. And even though the activity is in Washington, the impact is going to be felt all over the country because we're dealing with something called a debt limit or a debt ceiling, which will give or take away the opportunity for the United States government to borrow money that it needs to pay its debt and to pay for programmatic program ideas that are on the table. One side is taking the position that we are spending too much money as a national government. The other side taking the position that we are investing money appropriately to pay our debts and to finance the program services that we have for the people. such as paying Social Security to those individuals who have earned it, such as paying for Medicare and Medicaid, such as paying for children to be able to go to school and to have early childhood education, paying for things like TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. And so one side is attempting to cut all of these things, and that's the Republican side. And the Democratic side is saying, we're not really talking about spending, we are talking about investing. Now, let me tell you the difference between the federal government and state and local governments. State and local governments have to have what is called a balanced budget. That is, if they say they're going to spend $20 billion, they also have to tell you exactly where they're going to get the $20 billion from. It's one thing to talk about programs. It's one thing to talk about spending, but it's another thing to pay for those programs, to pay for those programs. And so you can't have the programs unless you're willing to pay for them. I often quote Frederick Douglass, an outstanding black man, African American, who was engaged in politics during and slavery, after slavery, during the period of Reconstruction. And Douglass used to say this, that one thing he knew if he didn't know anything else, and that is, in this country, in this America that we know, you may not get everything that you pay for, but you most certainly must pay for everything that you get. And he went on to say that there are those who would profess a love for freedom, or they want to do things, but when it comes to paying for it, then they begin to back up. They begin to hedge, or they refuse to make the laws, create the decisions. They just don't do it. And Douglass said that when we do that, it means that we want the rain without the thunder and the lightning, that we want the crops without plowing up the ground, that we want freedom without everything that is required in order to have it. And so I'm a Douglass kind of guy. I'm a guy who believes that you have to pay your debt. Now, you got to have a balanced budget in the city. You got to have a balanced budget. If you're going to spend $10 billion, as I said, you got to be able to tell people, where am I going to get the $10 billion from? Am I going to get it from our taxing system? Am I going to collect some fees and add to that? Am I going to come up with the income tax that I need to? Or how am I going to get it? And so there's no point in talking about it if you're not going to get it. Well, the federal government has a little bit of leeway. As long as you have the faith and credit or belief that you're going to be able to generate the resources, then you can borrow what you don't have. You can borrow what you need. You can project that you're going to get it and you're going to be able to pay. Now, if you've already got a limit saying you can only borrow up to this point, and up to this point is not enough, what are you going to do? You're going to either cut some things or you're going to go into default. Then you couldn't pay your debt. You couldn't pay what you already owed. You couldn't pay what you need to pay. And so how do you prevent that? You raise the limit. You raise the limit so you can get what you need. I want to see every child in our country have access to early childhood education. I want to see every sick child in our country be able to make use of the Children's Health Insurance Program. I want them to be able to get payment for the institutions of the doctors who treat them. And I want there to be enough money for that to happen. I don't want to see a child sick and can't get the medical care that he or she need because their parents don't have enough money. If you are working and you earn the minimum wage, you work every day, you make $15 an hour. Well, $15 an hour is not enough money to take care of the economic needs of a family of, say, 4 or 5 people, or maybe in some instances even more than that. And even if the family is earning much more than that, but they've got a special set of needs. And the other side of saying that the individuals who receive these benefits are receiving welfare. Well, it's not welfare if you are a mother and you've got 3 or 4 children and you're getting SNAP benefits, or you're getting a Social Security benefit, or you're getting Medicaid so that you can take those kids to the doctor or to the hospital, because wherever they go, it's going to cost. And you say that they are welfare recipients. No, the state is assisting them. The city is assisting them. The federal government is assisting them. They're not welfare queens. They're not benefiting or taking advantage of a no work. Who's going to take the kid? Who's going to take care of the children while they are at work? Who's going to provide the discipline that the children need to have? When the parents are out the door, something happens. And you sure don't have to ask me about that happening, because I know situations where the parent just simply went to the grocery store or went to pick up something and were only gone for a few minutes, and something happened while they were gone that wrecked the lives of that family for the rest of time, the rest of being. And so we need to come to grips with the fact that if we continue down this road of what I call brinksmanship, that is, where we're wondering each and every day, pretty soon we're going to run out of money. We're going to run out of borrowing power. And we're going to reach the point where we either are going to have to default on some of our debt, which is something that we have not done. Nobody wants to be called a deadbeat debtor. That is, somebody who cannot pay their debt. The United States, you may think it does not bother you, or you may think this is beyond your pay grade to decide, but everything that we do affects the whole country, and it affects you. If you don't get your Social Security check, you are affected. If you're in the military and you don't get your military pay, you are affected. If you're getting SNAP benefits so that your family can have nutritiousness meals, and you can't get those meals, you can't get that nutritional food, then you are negatively affected. We don't want to see people negatively affected. So I'm hoping that the president and the other party, now there are all kind of possibilities in terms of how you can overcome, but generally you need a majority in both houses of the legislative branch to be in agreement about something. And so if the Senate is in agreement and the House is not in agreement, you don't really have a bill that you can send to the president to sign. You just don't have it. And so I'm hoping that we're going to be able to reach agreement in the next day or two, or next few days, so that we can have the necessary money to keep our government functioning the way that it ought to function. And then, of course, the Supreme Court would also have to agree that we have not done anything that is unconstitutional in this process, because if they don't agree that everything that we've done in the process is constitutional, then, of course, they can declare it unconstitutional and it can't happen again. So I've talked about some of the bad news, coming out of Washington, that is in Washington, hoping that we're going to be able to reach agreement. I also want to mention some good things that the Supreme Court most recently did. The Supreme Court, we have all these different branches of government. We have the legislative branch, is where I serve, and that's where we make laws. We decide things and we make laws. Then we have the executive branch that has the authority to implement or carry out these laws the way that we intended for them to carry them out. But we also have the judiciary branch, and that branch is where the Supreme Court comes in play. The Supreme Court, or the court system, can interpret these laws, and they can say, everything you've done sounds good, it is good, it would solve the problem, but it's not constitutional. It's not implementing what the Constitution has said that you can do. So the state of Illinois, for example, have put a ban on assault weapons, these guns that you can shoot 40, 50, 60 times, or 20 times in 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Assault weapons, weapons that you would think of using in military operations. Well, Illinois, which is one of the better states in the nation in terms of its gun laws. And in Illinois, we said, nope, You can't be buying these weapons, and you can't be selling them, and you can't be letting anybody who really should not have access to them have them. Well, somebody filed a lawsuit against the state and said the state does not have the authority to make that determination. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has upheld the Illinois ban on assault weapons. So I give the Supreme Court a great hand clap for that. You know, when you're in church and people say, let's give a great hand clap. Well, I give the Supreme Court a hand clap because I agree with the decision that they made. And we are fortunate that we live in a country where we can make those kind of decisions. And when you agree with something, you can say, right on. When you disagree, you can say, no, I don't like that. I'm in disagreement. In some countries, you have difficulty doing that. In some countries, if you disagree with the primary decision makers, then you have jeopardized your freedom. You have jeopardized or put into question the possibility or the probability, if you will, that the government may come after you. But in our country, you can make those kind of decisions. You can say, no, I disagree with what the government said. I think the law ought to be changed. I think we ought to be doing something different. And so we are fortunate, and I know I'm getting down to the end of my time, but before I do that, let me also mention things that are taking place. On tomorrow at 4 o'clock, there's going to be a celebration in the South Austin community for our new mayor, Mayor Brandon Johnson. There's a church at 5440 West Gladys, and we are going to have a celebration. Everybody in the community, everybody in the Chicagoland community, wherever you are, welcome to come and help celebrate the election of our new mayor. But in addition to celebrating, we are also going to give him a whole bunch of things that we'd like to see his administration do. We're not giving them to him in terms of saying, we are demanding so and so and so and so, so and so and so and so and so. We are suggesting, Your Honor, that your administration be actively engaged in promoting block club organizing or helping people in our communities become more a part of the solution as opposed to being part of the problem. Or we believe, Mr. Mayor, that you ought to have more opportunities for law enforcement and citizens to work together cooperatively to try and solve crime. We believe, Mr. Mayor, that an ounce of prevention is worth much more than a pound of cure. Therefore, we want to try and prevent crime. We want to try and prevent violence. We want to try and keep these activities from happening. Therefore, we don't have to cure them. If we can prevent them And the best way to prevent them from happening is for children to grow up with as many positive attitudes, positive approaches to life, help for their parents. And if we can do that, Mr. Mayor, then we believe Chicago is going to be a better city. So I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I want to thank Hotline 21, Chicago Cable Television, for giving us the opportunity to bring these messages to you. Have a wonderful weekend. Do something good for yourself and something even better for somebody else. It's a pleasure to be with you on Friday evenings. And the thing I'll say is look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, do some good stuff. See you next Friday.